It's so nice to see all of you out there. I really love this event. And I don't know why, but there's such a good feeling that comes out of it. And I love getting swept up in the good feeling myself. So, yeah, I'm very happy to be here. So, I didn't really know what I was going to talk about, and I still don't really. But as I was talking with Rudy last night for the first time about this, it occurred to me that I didn't know what points I wanted to make. And those of you who have been in my trainings, you can hear by the laughter that I really harp on what points you want to make. And so as I was walking back to the other hotel, I started reflecting on it. And then all of a sudden it occurred to me, this topic does not lend itself to anything in form. Mm-hmm. And so I decided the best thing I could do would be to forget about it. So I'm up here not knowing what to say, except that last night, so I get home, I go into my email, and I found an email from someone that really, really surprised me. It was somebody who had just been in the training retreat that we did, who had left a little early. And so I asked her permission if I could read it, because it kind of blew me away. And she gave me permission, so I'm going to start by reading this to you. I don't usually put my glasses on, so. Ooh. I told you I don't usually put my glasses on. Dear Jack, I feel compelled to write to you about my reflections since returning from Spain, as I cannot contain my excitement as to this most moving experience. As I boarded the plane to England on Monday afternoon, my initial thoughts were that of a sense of gratefulness for my experience, followed by the thought dance of overjudging my coaching demo, to looking back on the highlights of the retreat. This then followed with overwhelming tiredness. As Monday dawned, I cannot pinpoint the moment I started to experience such a euphoric state, one of absolute well-being, peace, and compassion. But the moment is immaterial. All I know is the feeling that followed is greater than words, virtually inexplicable, and no other experience I have ever had. To try to describe it cannot fully do it justice, but I feel I must try. It was as though I was experiencing peaceful classical violins whilst I floated from place to place, smelling pure fresh air filled with rich colors of sheer beauty. Actually, she was probably hearing Frederick. So overwhelmed by my experience, I could hardly contain myself, and yet I found myself at work, effortlessly accomplishing a higher level of achievement driven by the feeling. As the day progressed to the evening, the music and vivid colors of well-being that I had basked in became sharper, as though the lens of a camera had just been reset to focus. What I started to see was the very essence of mind gliding through me and others around me. As the days are moving on, I am experiencing moments of thought nothingness, with the interruption of thought overcrowding. I'm just going along with the highs and lows and just being. On Wednesday, my son, who has taken a year out of uni due to so-called depression, was home alone when the area experienced a power cut. Finding himself without any IT or entertainment, he started reading your book. Somebody should have told us. That's the secret. No. Arriving home in anticipation of a distraught, thought-filled son, I was much taken aback when he told me that the dark cloud had lifted, that it was like a switch had gone on. He went on to inform me that he had already had the insight prior to starting your book, but feels the book helped to see how life works. As the week progressed, my once tense and argumentative relationship with my husband started to appear different. Since being home, we are enjoying consecutive evenings of beautiful company that I would liken to having a new relationship without trying. I have the same son, same husband, but a very different experience. I know I am principles in action, as are my family. To see this is the greatest insight to date. May I grow in this realization. For those of you who knew her, if you haven't guessed, that was Peggy. Lily's Peggy. Yeah. Now, the reason I read that was because she dropped into a state of her true nature. And our true nature is something that is always with us, because it really is our spiritual essence. It's our soul. It's pure consciousness. And the most amazing thing to me about our true nature is that the qualities that it has, you know, I like to say peace, love, and it's like the pure incubator from which wisdom springs. So peace, love, and wisdom, that would always be present for us at every single moment if we didn't think ourselves away from it. Because our true nature is what is inside and would come out to the world if it weren't for this block of it, which we create inadvertently with our thinking. To me, that is the most humbling thing that I know. It's like, why can't I exist in that state of peace, love, and wisdom all the time? Because my thinking gets in the way. That's the simplicity. Sid used to tell us, you're making it too complicated. You know, and just, it's only been in the last 6 months or so that I've really been able to see what he was talking about. It's the only thing that I really teach now in terms of the three principles are two things. What I call creation of illusion and essence and oneness. That's it. Everything can be boiled down to that. So essence and oneness, the pure essence within us that is connected to the oneness of all things, that is in relationship to creation of illusion, because that relationship is why we're not all just feeling that in every moment.
Pass the baton. That's beautiful. Thanks, Jack. I guess to me the title True Essence is truth isn't in the realm of human beings. It's not what we make up, it's not what we think, it's not what we philosophize about. It's before human thought. So truth is the backdrop of experience. And as human beings, we get glimmers of that truth, and then we make up words, pictures, books, diagrams of that truth. But that's not the truth. That's what we've made up from the truth. So when you go beyond the packaging of truth, which you could call models and ideas and good beliefs and philosophies, you're left with what is. And in a sense, what is just love. And I thought what I'll do is I'll try and talk about personal experiences of that rather than something theory-based. I spoke to some colleagues at lunch, and actually Steph did the metaphor about like a diamond, that, you know, we're all diamonds, and the diamond gets covered over. And so we're all born from this pure essence, so to speak, and then conditioning starts. And the diamond gets covered over more and more and more. And upbringing and the media, and parental influences. And we have the illusion of separation. And it's the illusion of separation, it's not actually separation. But I just wanted to say that for me personally, I had a very toxic upbringing. My father was violent, my mother was an alcoholic, personality disorder. I had horrific bullying when I was a kid. I remember being so terrified as a kid that I couldn't scream. I was just frozen with fear. That used to happen numerous times per week. And by the time I got to 20, the diamond was so covered over that I didn't know it existed. And the only reason I'm telling you this is you're not what's happened to you, and you're not what you think. You're the power thinking. Your consciousness having thought, but you're not that thought. And so I had a spontaneous insight 25 years ago where this sense of Rudy dissolved and there was just what was. And I know this sounds crazy, but I do apologize. But dropping into what is, you realize you're not alone. There's multiverses upon multiverses upon multiverses of other universes. Everything's much bigger than you can possibly imagine and much smaller. And the concurrent theme running throughout all of it was love. And it was a love so non-personal that when the experience ended and the personality of Rudy was formed again, I was just kind of crying uncontrollably because it was just, home. Like, I hadn't realised how far I'd got from this sense of home. And then all of the stuff that had happened to me, to a degree, kind of became in the realm of thought rather than who I was and what was true. And I was searching for a way to articulate this, and I couldn't find a way until I came across this understanding. I looked to the profound, but it didn't seem very practical. I looked to the practical, but that just wasn't profound enough. And then I saw something practically profound. Or profoundly practical. Which you could label as the three principles. And to me, it offers a logic of thought in the moment and a majesty of what's making it all happen. It's a transcendental logic. They are one of the same thing. And so to experience love unconditionally, because we all put love on things, on people, on situations. But what happens if there was no people and situations? It was just what was, and what is love. It's love masquerading. And this power of thought is so powerful that it can create the illusion that it's separate from itself. And then we buy into the rudiness, or the jackness, or the mandiness, the Peterness of life, and we believe that's who we actually are. But what we actually are isn't in the form, it's not in the personality, it's what's enlivening the personality. And what is love. And as we fall back into love again, we fall away from our personalities. The seriousness of ourselves, the drama and the stories of our lives. My life is so boring. It's like I'm not that important. What's happened is happened, but it just is what it is. We're really not that special. We're really not that important. What's happened to us isn't that interesting. But what's enlivening us to have a personal experience, now that's something.
This is reminding me that I followed Roger Mills to the UK. So I was doing a session in Colchester, and a few people that are in this room were there, namely Sue, Peter, were you there? Peter, Rudy, Jenny, and I don't know, this was back in the days that the psychologists had gotten involved, and I think it was still when this understanding was called psychology of mind. And Rudy came up to me afterwards and said, I have to talk to you. Or would you be willing to talk, or something like that. So I remember we went out into a kind of like an empty lot. I mean, there was grass in it, it was flat. And he started very carefully trying to feel me out about, was I really talking spiritual? Do you remember that? And because when the psychologists were involved, and that was actually the time when they were trying to get the American Psychological Association to accept the three principles, what was to accept psychology of mind. And so they knew that anything spiritual would not be accepted by the American Psychological Association, so talking spiritual started becoming frowned upon. All right? So Rudy must have picked up that I was saying something a little different, and he was feeling me out. And I've always seen it spiritual. And I was of the mind that I didn't really care how anybody else talked about it. I saw it as spiritual. I even put the first time I heard Roger Mills speak, so I was writing my book, Prevention, the Critical Need at the time, and when I squeezed something in my book about this understanding, having heard it for the very first time, I put it in the chapter called Spirituality and Prevention. And it wasn't talked about that way. But when I And I know why I started talking about it that way. Because I had an experience, a direct experience with Sid Banks, which for the first time I wrote about in Seduced by Consciousness. But what I want to say about it is in the moment that I got my mind blown apart, I ceased to exist as an entity. There are no words that I could ever use to describe this. In fact, this whole subject that we're talking about, there are just no words. But I saw something in that moment that I could never describe, but I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that there was a lot more going on than I thought there was. And that I, as Jack Pransky, was just a little tiny part of something so much greater. And I caught a glimpse of the kind of thing that Rudy was just talking about. Like I glimpsed it. I glimpsed it so much that it shook me up and I couldn't even function afterwards. I had to kind of get brought down to earth. And then I tried to find it again, could never find it again. And the more I tried, the less, because we're trying with our thinking mind, and it's impossible. We have to, it's like inadvertently sometimes we drop away from our thinking mind, and we fall into what our true essence really is. Now, to me, even though I didn't understand it, even though it made no sense to me in terms of my practical life, the thing that I took away from that was comfort. That no matter what problems and craziness and issues and drama that I got involved with in my life, there was something more that I could take comfort in. And that has always been there ever since as like a backdrop of my life. Like it's been in the back of my mind. I would get lost in moments, many moments, more moments than I care to say. But always in the back of my mind, there was that comfort that came from what I saw then. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's real, that it's true. It's just that we don't see it.
Thanks. We live in this divine play or ebb and flow of spiritual energy, creating the illusion of separate beings walking around, taking themselves so seriously. And I don't know why it is, I just don't know why it is, but for whatever reason, this power to think that we are separate seems to be inbuilt in the nature of experience. So when we talk about seeing it and not seeing it, or getting it and not getting it, what happens if there was just the experience of what's happening without the labeling of seeing it and not seeing it? What happens if you dissolved spiritual and psychological to just what's happening? Because this animating for this spiritual power animates our psychology. It's the same power used in two different ways. What happens if there weren't three principles and there was just this one power showing up in three different ways? What would happen if there wasn't conditioned thinking and insightful thinking, and just the fact that we think, the power to think, and we define that thinking as certain things? Like, as soon as you get rid of the dualities of higher and lower, and right and wrong, and good and bad, and this and that, you're left with just this moment. You're left just with this moment. And it just is what it is. It's like I used to have conditions on my own mind that if I was feeling good, then I was good. If I was in a particular state of mind, then I'm good. But if I was in a different state of mind, then I wasn't good. And I think what I've seen through this love is it's completely unconditional. It needs no conditions to be what it is, because it just is what it is. And so to have my mind, I'm having to define it as lost and not lost. To have my mind as high and low, to have my mind as sad or happy. Like, my mind doesn't have to be doing anything for there to be freedom. There's freedom in all of it. I remember a while ago something happened, and there was an incredible amount of sadness and mourning and sometimes anger, and there was just a really horrible personal experience. And I'm sure we can all relate to that within our own lives at some stage. But a lot of the time there was just the experience of sadness. There wasn't really sad. Because when you get rid of the duality, the sense of self starts to dissolve, and there's just the experience of what's happening. And one of Sid's great quotes is, if the only thing we saw is not to be afraid of our experience, that alone would change the world. So in my own evolution of this, there's this undefining of my experience as this or that, right and wrong, high and low, good and bad, wisdom, non-wisdom, seeing it, not seeing it. So this is just what's arising in this moment. And what's arising is love. It's creation and destruction. Love has teeth. It's not all poppy fields and Hendrix puppy dogs, and it's both at the same time. But when you get rid of creation and destruction, you've got one flow of spiritual energy arising in the moment. And as human beings, thinking we're separate, we get to experience the totality of all of it via thought in the moment. That's how we're all exactly the same. We've got this common humanity. We all work exactly the same. But we're all uniquely different, because our thinking creates such a different experience. Like, I did a talk at the Tikkun Center a couple of nights ago, and I spoke a bit about love, and one lady said, "So you're telling me we just have to love people and they can walk all over us?" And I paused and I said, "Who else heard me say that? Put your hand up." Nobody put their hand up. So she'd heard me say that even though I hadn't said that. And you're hearing me and Jack via your own perception of myself and Jack, and then you're creating perceptions in your own mind of what we're talking about. That's the power of thought. Thought is the bridge between the form and the formless. It's the missing link. And that's where I talk about the logic or the practical nature of the three principles. Because I've been to India, I've heard the profound, but it didn't quite fit into everyday life. What Sid uncovered is a bridge between the form and the formless, and he called it the missing link of thought. But when I talk about thought, I'm talking about mind, thought and consciousness, because they're all one thing. in 3 different ways. Truth's always simple. Truth's always one. And that oneness points to that we're one being with different eyes, all staring off in different directions, believing that we're looking in the right direction. But what happens if there wasn't the right direction? There is just this one. When I talk about mind, thought, and consciousness, it's like one conscious thinking mind, one consciousness, thinking, thought, mind, universal mind is one. And I guess for me, as the duality started to dissolve, your bandwidth on life increases and you start having more experiences of the formless nature of life. And one of them was nature, like everything, nature has sounds. Like you go into nature and there's a sound, there's a resonance, there's a song to everything. And it's so beautiful. I remember just breaking down in tears because my physical body couldn't take the majesty of it. It's always oneness, it's always unity, and it's always away from the personal. And it's always love.
Rudy's deeper than I am.
I don't think so.
Part of our true nature is wisdom. And some of you might be thinking, Rudy mentioned Hitler and Gandhi in the same sentence, in the realm of love. And I see it more in very practical terms. That if Hitler was guided by wisdom, there would not have been a Holocaust. Mm-hmm. And anybody who treats anybody else in a way that is hurtful is not being guided by wisdom, which I believe is part of our true nature. Now, when you go into the realm of oneness, what Rudy says is absolutely true. To me, here in this form, it is very helpful to sometimes see the separation. If someone sees oneness in the moment, and they are guided by pure love, that is incredible. You don't ever need to talk about thought. Mm-hmm. It just is. And it's beautiful, and it's peaceful automatically. And I don't want people to think that anyone needs to see it that way. Because everybody sees it the way that they see it. And sometimes it's very helpful for people to see the separation between mind, consciousness, and thought. If people can see the oneness of it all, wonderful. If people can't see that, it's really, really helpful to know that our thoughts, that our great gift of the power of thought can create these illusions that keep us separate from seeing, from feeling peace, love, and wisdom. And when we see that in action in our lives, that is equally, what's the word I want? Healing.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that, because that experience I mentioned first off, before then I was angry, I was aggressive, I used to punch holes in doors. I was under this black cloud, and the only person that can ever get me out of the cloud was my sister. I was in a really bad way, and my religion was atheism. I did not believe in anything divine. Like, if something divine existed, why the hell has this shit happened to me? And then, spontaneously, I was a true believer. Not in a personification of a god, but in the fact that there's something majestic behind all of it. And the nearest term I could label it with as being human beings is what I would call love. I didn't learn that. I didn't read a book. Sid didn't read a book. Actually, I'm not comparing myself to Sid. I'm not saying that. So, that's our true essence. It's within us. It's the fabric of reality. And sometimes, spontaneously, we just remember. And then we go home again. And home is love. And if love is seen, then you don't need someone talking about the power of thought. Actually, if the power of thought is seen, you don't actually need someone talking about love, because it's all the same. We're just giving it different terms. So just to know that we're sparks of the divine, playing in life, making up our experience via thought, believing it to be true and living in that experience. But beyond what we think, there's the heartbeat of the universe pulsing through us, enlivening us. And we are all that heartbeat. We're this grand orchestra of the divine. And we think we're playing the music. The music's just playing, but we just think that we're the ones doing it.
Hilarious.
We take ourselves so seriously.
Yeah, a couple of days ago, I was taking myself really, really seriously. Something came up that I didn't like hearing. It was, I was admitting that it was the truth. I felt bad about it. And I woke up the next morning with to me, an unbelievably incredible thought, new thought. Now the odd thing is, I've had this thought before, but as an intellectual thought, as a philosophical thought. But when I woke up yesterday morning, or 2 days ago, whatever it was, with this thought, I felt it to my bones for some strange reason. And I know where I put it. I have a thought in my pocket. I just wanted to get this exactly right. What if none of this really exists? Whoa. What if we're making this all up? Really? And the only thing left is what Rudy's talking about. it's very humbling, you know, to see what we get ourselves into. You know, all these little things that happen to us that seem like huge things in this world of form. But just like with any other of these thoughts that these huge insights that I've gotten along the way, they come up, and then life steps in. I forget about them, get caught again, and yet part of our true nature is that we are in, I can't even describe this, it's like we're in a process, which is the wrong word, of having the power of new insight coming to us at any moment. We just don't know when it's coming. Yeah, that's why I can sit across from anyone in a counseling or coaching session or in a training group, and I see right beyond their presenting behavior, some of which is not pleasant sometimes, at least to them, and right through to knowing that they are love, and that they are whole, and that they are fine, because that is their true nature, just like it's my true nature. So even though it's like I have an insight like that, I feel it to my bones, I forget, but then it goes into becoming part of the backdrop of my life. You know, I can't touch it all the time, but it's there. It's still there. Never really goes away. When you see something to that kind of depth, it never really goes away. So it's there to be drawn upon. But you can't go out of your way to draw upon it. That's the weird thing about it. You just kind of, there's a knowing, like, that our true nature is really what there is. And everything else, what if it didn't exist?
Jack's deeper than me.
In Mutual Depth Society.
Oh, dearie me. So, when you take the term "our true nature," if you take the "our" out of it, that's the true nature. Because the "our" part of it is the creator of all illusion. The nature, the true nature, is just what's happening. And so I kind of think for me, I create so much, sorry to swear, but crap in my head. Hands up who creates that in their head. Yeah. Like, I constantly amaze myself with the amount of chaos I can create within my own head, the amount of insecurity and the amount of judgmental thinking and all of that just circulating in my head. I'm really good at doing that. I've probably got more qualifications than Rani Bora for doing that. But the problem isn't the creation of all that stuff, it's seeing what it is. I think Mandy spoke about the fog. Like, for whatever reason, there's going to be fog. Like, you look at nature, there's just fog. You look at the nature of our minds, and there just happens to be fog. If fog's a problem, then your experience of fog is going to be a problem. You can be self-judgmental, because it's not the fog, it's thinking about fog giving us our experience of the mental fog. But what happens if there was just fog? and then there isn't. If you get rid of the me bit there, there's just experience. And experience is divine regardless of the feeling of it. Does that make any sense at all? Yeah. And so, it's really, what's been really helpful to me is being able to just have a foggy mind and not really care. Because you're going to get a foggy mind. You're going to get lost. You're going to get found. You're going to have all experience. Embracing the totality of all of it, just as it is, allows living in an unconditional life. You don't have to have a condition of your mind being a certain way to experience freedom. Freedom is in the down, freedom is in the up. Freedom just is. And what is love. It's always, 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 always love. Even though it may not look like it.
I'm really blessed to be living with someone now who talks to God. Now, a lot of people talk to God, but God talks back. She hears answers. It's uncanny to me. I couldn't grasp how she was able to pull this off. I mean, I consult wisdom. Yes or no answers. But this was a conversation. And it happens whenever she gets to a difficult place and realizes it. Sometimes she gets to a difficult place and doesn't realize it, but as soon as she realizes it, she will go and do this. So it occurred to me, I wonder if I can do this. So one day before all this happened, before I was with her, I was walking along the beach, and this thought came to me from out of nowhere that some of you have heard. All we are is peace, love, and wisdom, and the power to create the illusion that we're not. Mm-hmm. I couldn't believe that I heard that. It didn't come from me. One could say God was speaking. And then I actually, my partner was telling me, that we were having a particular little problem, and she said, I want you to consult God about this. And I was thinking, uh-oh. And she actually gave me instructions on how to do it. So again, I'm walking along the beach, and I went through this process of asking questions, and I started getting answers, but not in words. It's the weirdest thing. I started getting answers in like metaphors were shown to me, like metaphors in the ocean and on the sand. Mm. And I was thinking, whoa. But then it occurred to me, talking to God is talking to our true nature, or allowing our true nature to speak and to listen. That's all it is. There's nothing really mysterious about it. It probably happens to every one of us at various times. But if we could, I don't know what the word is again, set our intention more to hear that, we would hear it more. It's not thinking about it, setting our intention to hear it and then forgetting about it. I have no idea what time it is.
I think we're finishing now. I think that's time, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh. All right then.